If a black bear stands on its hind legs, it's about to charge.
No. A lot of people probably are not handling their meat right when they think bear doesn't taste good.
If hunters were not allowed to hunt, bears specifically, what would happen? The season started. Every dadgum acorn fell out of the tree.
Absolutely.
They'd rather eat that than eat bait. What do you recommend to the hunter who finds himself in that situation?
Hey, before we jump into this episode with Spencer Daniels, I just wanted to address something that has happened since we interviewed Spencer. You may have seen in the news there was a bear attack in Arkansas, the first one in over 25 years in Arkansas. Essentially what happened was there was a 72-year-old man who was out working on his tractor near Mulberry Mountain and was taking a break, and a young juvenile 70-pound yearling bear came up and attacked him. Very, very abnormal behavior, very unusual, and it's just not something you would expect, especially unprompted, no food around. You know, he sustained a lot of injuries, and I believe his condition is stable now, but his family has said that he's not expected to ultimately survive these injuries. So just wanted to say our thoughts and prayers to that family and anyone who's friends with them. And at the end of the day, while we talk a lot about bears, we appreciate them for the wildlife that they are and the resource that we have. They're a wild animal, and, you know, we have to be careful with that too. And, you know, it's a really tragic situation. So again, thoughts and prayers to that family, and you guys stay safe out there in the woods. Hope you guys enjoy this episode.
Welcome back to the Ozark podcast. I'm your host for this week, solo, Kyle Plunkett. Mr. Kyle Veet, he's out. He had some things with his family he had to take care of and wasn't able to make this one. And so you're getting just me as a bear hunter and a bear lover, but not a bear expert or a bear biologist. And so thankfully, sitting across from me at the table here, we have the bear program coordinator for Arkansas Game and Fish Commission, Mr. Spencer Daniels. Yep. Spencer, thanks for driving up here from Cabot, Arkansas, and jumping on the podcast.
Absolutely. Happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
Man, I'm glad you're getting to do this. We try to talk bears about every year, knowing that we're talking to a already niche audience about a very niche subject. And so not that many people hunt bears, not that many people interact with bears. And I'm surprised how many people I hear from who don't even know that we have bears in Arkansas.
Yeah,
they're probably not outdoorsmen. And if they are, maybe they float or they fish or that kind of thing. But surprising amount of people every year are like, wait, you hunt bears? Are there even bears to hunt? And it's like, yeah, there's a lot of them actually. And hunters are needed. And so we're going to talk some biology, some harvest data, some quotas, bears, you know, myths and facts and culture and all of that kind of stuff. And so, man, to get started, I know you're pretty fresh in the role. You just took the bear coordinator program, and you've been doing bear den studies and all of that. Give me, as best you can, just kind of the overview of the bear population in the Arkansas Ozarks.
Yeah, absolutely. So we don't have a recent actual population estimate, but anywhere from 5,000 to 8,000 is what we think right now, what we have in Arkansas. Mm-hmm. And that's, I'm sure y'all have talked about the history before, but, you know, Arkansas, formerly known as the Bear State, we used to have over 50,000, you know, back in the 1800s or so. Mm-hmm. And, you know, obviously that was a long time ago before there were as many people. So not necessarily have the capacity for that, but we had a lot of bears. And in mid 1950s, through the 60s, we actually reintroduced bears in the Ozarks and the Ouachitas, and kind of restored the population back from around 50 is what we think we had. So we're doing
50,000
really well.
to 50.
Yeah, from 50,000 to 50 up to 5,000 or so now.
That's unreal.
Yeah.
And you said that program was in the 50s?
Yeah, so they actually brought bears down from Manitoba, Canada, and Minnesota. They just brought them down on trucks. I mean, if you see the pictures, it's pretty funny setup. They just got a bunch of cages in the back of a truck, hauling them down the interstate. And they brought them down for about 10 years, from 56 to 65 or so.
Okay.
About 254 bears.
Okay.
Yeah. So from 254 plus 50 to what we have now, it's known as one of the most successful reintroductions of a large carnivore in the world, actually.
Yeah. No, we've talked about that, and we've heard that touted on the Bear Grease and at the Black Bear Bonanza and all that kind of stuff of huge conservation win.
Absolutely.
For the state. Was all of that happening about the same time that turkeys were being brought back into Missouri, and there was deer refuges that were happening all over the state to try, were all the populations at a decline? And the agencies were trying to raise the levels kind of at the same time?
I don't know if that was something that was kind of one big concerted effort or not. I imagine it was along similar timelines, just from realizing we needed to do some actual conservation work in the 30s, and so it was kind of when the conservation movement kicked off. So I imagine it was close to it. I don't know if it was necessarily the same effort or not, though.
Okay, so 5,000 to 8,000 bears right now. What does that tell you about overall kind of population health in the state of Arkansas?
We got a really good, healthy population. I mean, there's room to grow for sure. The Ozarks is our strongest population, and the Ouachita's too. We have a pretty good, healthy population in the Gulf Coastal Plain as well. You can pretty much see a bear anywhere in the state, but those 3 zones are our biggest population centers.
And y'all opened up a hunting season in the Gulf Coastal Plain. Correct me. Was it last year for the first time or 2 years ago?
2023.
So 2 years ago for the first time.
Yep.
And the quotas I know are pretty low for that part of the state.
Yeah, it's 25 in Zone 4 and 5 in Zone 3. Okay. And there actually hasn't been a bear killed in Zone 3 yet since it's been opened up. So
Zone 4, is that quota being hit?
Yeah, usually it gets hit pretty regularly. I think it was hit last year.
Okay.
Yeah, they got all 25.
Okay.
So,
and were those bears that were brought from the Ozarks down, or they just have migrated over the last 30, 40
actually
years?
That's the interesting thing that probably doesn't get talked about a whole lot is the 50 remaining bears we had and that we talk about was in the White River population near the Mississippi River. So that was actually where, Arkansas genetics were holding out.
No way.
And so they've expanded from there. And we actually did a small reintroduction from the White River down to Felsenthal. And so that's actually where real Arkansas bears are, if you really want to think about it from genetic side.
They weren't holding up in the hills?
Nope. Yeah.
What kept them there? How did they,
It's just a good secluded spot. I mean, bears like to stay away from people as much as they can. They like to be in the woods and on their own and that type of thing. So it's a pretty good spot for them. And they just weren't getting, hit as hard there.
Man, I just learned. I did not know that.
Yeah. It's actually it's funny that that's not talked about as much because we love to talk about their introduction because it was such a huge success.
Yeah,
but the actual holdout was in the White River.
Man, if I was a betting man, I would have put money on they're up in the hills.
Yeah,
like the last 50. They were holding out in some really nasty terrain, whatever. But no, they were out in the plains.
Yep,
out in farm country.
Yeah, basically.
That's cool. There's a duck club with a bunch of buddies that I hunt at, and the last couple of years they've started getting some really, really big bears on camera where they're looking for deer. They also hunt ducks out there, but they know that I love bears, and so they keep sending me bear cam pictures. Big bears. Like, what do we do with this? It's like, you can hunt it.
Yeah.
Check the quota.
Yeah.
Like, it's fair game. Man, that's cool. All right. So bear population is it's growing, it's healthy, somewhere in the 5,000 to 8,000 bear range. Knowing that, and maybe talk us through some of the studies y'all do in the spring, the summer, the fall, and help our listeners understand, how do we set a quota? Why do we set a quota? And then really, what are the quotas set to for anybody who doesn't want to read the regs?
Right. Yeah. So right now we've got around 60 collars out on females, and we use that for monitoring reproduction and really keeping track of how the population grows. It's not as much used for getting a population estimate, although there are techniques for using collars for that. But it's a lot easier for bears just to use hair snares type stuff and get some DNA and use that to quantify how much space they use and all these complicated statistics. But for the collars, we'll use that to actually track them when they go into their winter dens, and we'll go in and tranquilize the sow and count the cubs, get some biological data on them, that type of thing. So we'll keep up with reproduction that way and how much the population is growing. And then that goes into other population estimates, and we can kind of put that all together, figure out how much we can harvest sustainably and, not hurt the population. And that's what those quotas are aimed at. They're not really a goal as much as they are just a cutoff point to keep from making any population declines. And that's usually with female harvest kind of in mind. Bear quotas are set pretty conservatively traditionally, just to make sure that, it's easy to make a bear population decline. They're pretty sensitive to harvest that way. They're very resilient animals in all other aspects, but because of how slow they reproduce, you're basically getting one bear from each sow on average a year. They average 2.3 cubs every litter, but they're only having a litter every other year. So it's about
Right.
one bear per year. So if you overharvest females, then that can lead to some pretty bad places as far as the population goes. So that's what those quotas are aimed at, is just making sure we're not doing too much. And, we have a recreational opportunity, good food and that type of thing, but also not doing anything bad to the population.
So they replace themselves every other year by having an average of 2.
Basically, yeah.
Yeah, talk through some of that biology too, because I know we've mentioned it years ago, but we got a lot of new listeners. How often do females reproduce, and what's the cub average, and what's that life cycle like? What's that kind of biological cycle like?
Yeah, so I would say it's very dependent on the habitat as far as when they're able to reproduce. A good, healthy female will reproduce around 3 or 4, but in habitats where there's not a lot of resources available, they can even go up to 7, 10 years before they're actually able to reproduce. But they're doing good here, around 3 or 4 for their first litter. And the first litter is usually smaller. It's usually going to be 1. Sometimes it'll be 2. But from there, it'll be every other year, basically, and anywhere from 1 to even, we've seen 6 cubs. I don't know if that's been documented in Arkansas, but other bear populations, that's, call them super sows or whatever you want to call it. But it's going to be on average around somewhere between 2 and 3. And then that, it's not really a biological limitation. It's more of, once that sow has those cubs, she tries to keep them away from males, because males will kill the cubs, infanticide. So if that actually does happen, the female can come back into estrus and reproduce another litter. But usually it's going to be every other year that they're producing cubs, because they're taking care of that litter from last year. And she'll go into the den with those yearlings, and then after that, she'll kick out the males, and the female cubs will actually inherit some of the home range of the sow.
So it's not like a deer where a fawn is born and then by that next fall.
Yeah,
I mean, it's kind of out on its own, kind of ready to go. Those baby bears are staying with mama.
Yeah, deer are pretty good at reproducing, even having twins sometimes, but it's kind of the opposite for bears. They're pretty slow to reproduce. And the average age of a bear in the wild is probably going to reach maybe 20 if it's not harvested. So you're going to get maybe about 16 cubs out of one female. Something like that.
And for sexual maturity to not happen until 3, 4, maybe later.
Yeah.
I mean, that makes sense why you would need quotas to be set.
Right.
Because they're not reproducing year 1, and then they're not reproducing every year and just bear after bear after bear. I mean, it's a slower process.
Yeah, for sure.
That's good. I got a question on quotas from one of our hauler members, Brad Cordell. And he says, if we're seeing more bears and not meeting quotas, could we or would we see regulation changes, maybe an early opener date or different zones?
It's possible. I think right now we're still in the growing phase. We're not getting to the point where we're having, forgive the pun, unbearable problems with conflict bears, that type of thing. We see most of the conflict is with those young bears that are dispersing after they get kicked out of the den, which is going to happen pretty much anywhere. I mean, even in Mississippi, where I come from, we get the occasional yearling male that causes some problems. Just because they're traveling so much, they're going to run through somebody's yard and notice that their garbage can's full and, take a snack.
Yep.
So we haven't really gotten to the point where, there's 2 different ways you think about bear populations. There's carrying capacity, which is like a biological, ecological consideration. And then you have cultural carrying capacity, which is where you get to the point where people are just so fed up with bear problems that they don't want as many around. And we're not really at that point yet. That's really how most bear populations are managed, because the cultural carrying capacity is usually reached long before they reach biological carrying capacity. So right now our quotas are just aimed at making sure we don't harvest too much. We're not setting a goal for harvest quite yet, but if we get to that point, there could reasonably be some strategy changes for actually trying to harvest a certain amount to keep them at a stable population rather than slowly growing.
That makes sense. Yeah, if the problems become too much, you
Right.
can change regs
Right.
to let hunters step in and help.
Absolutely.
That makes sense. The you probably can't speak to this all that much, but Missouri has a bear season now, and it's a drawn system. And I think I'm right on that. If I'm wrong, somebody email me and let me know. But I'm pretty sure it's just a drawn system. It's not like Arkansas where if you buy your hunting license, you know you get the tag.
Yep.
You have to say you're going to do it, but you get the tag. And you don't pay extra, or you're not drawn, that kind of thing. My guess is that they have a ton of bears up in Missouri. I mean, the Missouri Ozarks and the Arkansas Ozarks are the same Ozarks.
Yeah.
So those there's got to be a ton of bears in there. Do you hear from anybody on their side of conservation going, man, we have bears all over the place, and the biological carrying capacity is good, but now there's the cultural carrying capacity, and we're running into problems. Like, I don't know if you're able to speak to that, but do you hear from the folks up there saying, what are y'all doing? We need help.
No, I know they do have conflict problems every now and then, but I don't think their population is quite as distributed across the state. I could be wrong. Like, somebody correct me, but I'm not super well versed on Missouri's bear population, but I don't think they're quite to the point we are, but they definitely have a good bit of bears. So it's just different management strategies. I don't know what the reasoning was for that, but
I just feel like they have to have a ton of bears.
Yeah.
I don't know why I feel that way. Maybe just because I've been in the
it does seem like
Arkansas
a berry
woods, and
state.
it's like it's a berry state.
Yeah.
I mean, there's at least up to and I don't know, somewhere past Branson. I feel like that stretch there's just got to be bears.
Yeah, I think a lot of their bear
over it.
population is from ours expanding up there, so that might be why they're a little bit more conservative. They're still trying to wait for it to expand as much as it can and that type of thing. So
that makes sense. That's actually a good question. When we were adding bears from Manitoba, from Canada, where were we putting them? Were we putting them in the Ozarks, or were we putting them further south?
Ozarks and the Washita's, yeah. There were basically two sites. I can't remember the exact site. Forgive me, I'm still a recovering Mississippian. But yeah, there were two different sites. One was in the Ozarks and one was in the Washita's.
Okay. So just right in the hills.
Yep.
That makes sense.
Yep.
So we got season coming up here pretty quick. I think by the time this one releases, we'll be a week or two out, Dan. Is that right?
September
Producer
17th.
Dan's over here. So we'll be, I know we're close now. So September 17th.
Baits are out.
Baits are out. Season's opening up real soon. What do we, talk to me just a little bit about using hunters as a management tool. I mean, hunters going out and harvesting bears to meet the quota. I know you don't have a number you have to hit, but we are a part of the equation.
Right.
Why are you using hunters as a primary strategy? And then my jumping off question to that is, what do you recommend hunters do when acorns drop early?
Okay.
Just like it did last year and messed up everybody's bait site.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I was here for that. That was kind of rough. But for the first part of that question, why we use hunters, bears are, charismatic megafauna. People always have an opinion on them, whether it's good or bad. And especially coming from Mississippi, I know this firsthand. When you're not able to hunt them, they're basically just going to frustrate you. They're going to tear down your deer feeders. They're going to get into your garbage, that type of thing. So allowing the public to hunt them adds a value to that resource. It's, it's something that people actually start to care about, and it helps us make, changes that are going to help the population grow and, have that actual native species that's supposed to be out there, have support for that. So that's kind of the biggest reason for allowing hunting, is just because it promotes support for the species being out there. But also, whenever you do get to that cultural carrying capacity, we can't control the population on our own. That allows folks to have opportunities for recreation and food, but also having people all around the state that are, contributing to population control whenever it's needed. So it's a huge tool in the conservation toolbox, hunting, as far as that goes. Remind me of the second part of the question. What was that?
Well, I have a follow up on that, and then I'll ask the second one, because that one's just kind of more tactics. So bears being a charismatic megafauna, I mean, being something people care about. What do you say to the anti-hunter who cannot believe that a hunter would want to go after a bear, and trying to educate them that hunting as a tool and a tactic for management is actually a healthy practice? not just ego or not just you want to go
Yeah.
after big bad things to make yourself feel, all that kind of
Yeah,
stuff.
all
You hear.
the trophy hunting,
Yeah.
saying, yeah.
What do you say to that person who just may not know?
Yeah, if they're a complete anti-hunter, then, I'm not going to argue with their own personal background, that type of thing. But I would just say, hunting is established in the culture, and it's something that, provides meat and food for folks. I mean, it's not just going out just because you want to shoot something.
Mm-hmm.
It's taking your own groceries into your own hands and experiencing the wild and the free places like that for yourself. And it's just a better way of acquiring food, honestly, is the way I would see it or say it. Probably not going to change the minds of any anti-hunters with that, but it's just, it helps conservation by, controlling populations when that's needed and allowing people to recreate and have a good time and get out in the woods and get their own food.
Mm-hmm.
So
if hunters were not allowed to hunt, bear specifically, what would happen?
yeah, we would have a lot of bear problems if hunters weren't allowed to hunt. Hunting does, there's mixed reviews on how it affects, conflict issues, but just from a population control standpoint, once bear populations start to get super dense, you see more conflict problems. So, like I mentioned earlier, if we get to that point where, we're seeing a lot of problems, then that population needs to be held stable or even
Mm-hmm.
bumped down. That's what it's going to be used for.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just one mechanism for population control, really. And if we don't hunt them, then we're going to have our hands full with conflict calls, and we're not going to be able to, as an agency, take care of all the bears out there on our own. So
we talk a lot on this podcast to how you cannot remove humans from the biological equation.
Yeah.
Like humans have always been a part of it.
Yep.
And we live in a world where it's easy to maybe kind of divorce humans from the wild.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like people are here and the wild is here. And we forget how much we're actually all intertangled with everything.
Yeah.
Now, I feel like we're getting better educated on that. As even something as simple as all of the pesticides or herbicides we spray on plants is actually really bad for bees and bad for birds and bad for whatever. So it's like we get that we're tied. But for some reason, when it comes to bear and deer specifically, but bear, feels like a big chunk of the population does not like the fact that hunters need to be a part of the equation.
Yeah.
Most likely because they don't run into bears all that often. So that the problems of hunters not being there haven't shown themselves. Like if bears were in everybody's backyards and tearing stuff up, they'd be where all the people trying to get the bears,
Yeah.
we need help over here. But
And there's studies that shown that bears do feel that hunting pressure. So, like I said, there's conflicting results on some things, but they know when they're being hunted. And, from my standpoint, that has to have an effect on whether they're going to come hang out in your backyard or not.
Mhm.
If they see people as a predator, as a threat,
Interesting.
they're more likely not going to be hanging around as much. And, we see that bears prefer habitat that's away from human activity.
Yeah.
So I think hunting probably has at least a small effect on bears feeling like whether or not they should be hanging around and causing conflict problems.
So it's even like a biological memory
Right.
as bears,
Yeah.
as they're growing up in the wild.
Yeah, and there is data out there that shows that the sows teach cubs stuff. So habituated sows can teach cubs that it's okay to go jump in this trash can right next to a hotel and
Mhm.
find some food there. And thankfully, we're not having those problems.
Yeah, we're not there.
yeah.
And there was a probably a yearling male black bear, real like beautiful kind of tan color, brown color, but black bear. And he was in a bunch of neighborhoods in like North Bentonville.
Mhm.
And so, there's schools, there's Walmarts. It's the urban center, right?
Yeah.
And he became Facebook famous for about I guarantee you saw it, for about 3 weeks. So much so that like my wife's aunt was posting pictures of like, he's in my backyard now. And somebody else who I know connected to the church was like calling me, was like, you like bears? This is cool. You'll love this.
Yeah.
And it was really interesting. It was kind of fascinating. It was fun to watch the whole community honestly wig out about like a 60-pound bear.
Yeah.
And I also loved reading some of the comments of like, it's a brown bear. So that means it's a grizzly. There's grizzlies in Arkansas. And it's like, no, there's not.
Yeah.
There really isn't, I promise.
Yeah, I've gotten that a couple of times since I've been here. Calls about grizzly bears being spotted and that type of thing. And it's even funny, you mentioned earlier, we were talking about how a lot of folks in Arkansas don't even know there are bears here, which just surprised me a big time when I got here, coming from Mississippi, with less than 1,000 bears probably, and formerly known as the Bear State. I'm like, y'all don't all know there's bears here? Yeah, so some folks are not used to it, and they'll freak out a little bit when a yearling male comes rolling through looking for a new home.
Yeah, it's always fun to watch.
Yeah.
At least fun to watch the Facebook chaos.
Yeah.
All right, my other question kind of tied to that was, hunting as a management tool and baiting on private land, and there's a whole lot of thoughts on baiting, and that's probably even a trail I'm not going to try to follow on this one, but baiting is allowed on private land, not on public land. And so baiting on private for hunting as management is a ethical, helpful tactic for AGFC to manage bears.
Absolutely.
What do you do when you have a year like we had last year, where season hit and then it's like to the day that season started?
Yep.
Every dadgum acorn fell out of the tree.
Absolutely.
Hit the ground.
It did.
And every one of those bears said, I don't care about your donut pile or your dog food or your popcorn or whatever. This is what I want. Like, they'd rather eat that than eat bait.
Yeah.
What do you recommend to the hunter who finds himself in that situation?
Get out in the woods. I mean, if the bait pile's not working, you got to go to them. If you find where the acorns are dropping most, try to hunt those areas. Get out on top of hills, do some glassing, that type of thing. I mean, if baiting's not working, you got to try something else. And that does happen. If you look at the trend in the past, 15 years or so, there's every now and then there's 1 year just goes down. And most of our harvest comes from baiting on private land. So that's what that is. When baiting's not successful, we do see a dip in harvest. And that's really because of calendar creep, the way it's set up. Every now and then it's going to coincide with the acorn crop. And there's been some talk about changing that and trying to figure out a good way to make that work. But with the way we're, the quotas are set to just as a max right now and not really as a goal, it's probably not going to change anytime soon, but it is something we, have in the queue, basically, if we need to. It's something we've talked about. But
yeah, so if it becomes a quota goal, that makes sense that you'd want to change the dates,
right,
to maybe do it earlier,
right,
that kind of thing. And right now it's set up where archery has a quota, and then alternative firearm, formerly muzzleloader, and then rifle, right? Because used to it's just, here's the quota,
right,
and all the archery guys would get all the bears.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's not the case anymore.
No.
It's still set up that way.
Yeah. So in zone 1, I believe it's 450, and then 50 for muzzleloader, or excuse me, I just changed to alternative firearm and modern gun. And then zone 2 is similar. Well, zone 2 actually doesn't have a quota, and that's just because we weren't ever meeting it. There's so much public land out there. It's harder to get bears on bait. So there's not as much bears harvested because of how successful baiting is. It's hard to hunt bears in the hills. So, and then zones 3, 4, and 5, they're much smaller quotas just because that's a less dense population. But and they don't actually have an archery season, zones 3 through 5 yet.
They just have muzzleloader and rifle.
Yep.
So are those quotas by zone? There's not a statewide quota?
No. Yeah, it's just by zone.
Okay. I bet you're allowed 1 bear, so I can't kill a bear in zone 1 and then go to zone 3.
Correct.
And try to get on another one.
Yep.
Okay. That's good to know.
Yeah.
Yeah. Last year we ran into that acorn problem. We were hunting with a buddy, John Odell, who is just he's a berry dude. He knows what he's doing. He's been on the cover of Bear Hunting Magazine. I was like, it's about bears. So he's been on the cover of Bear Hunting Magazine with just a huge old boar that he'd hunted with a bow. And anyway, he'd been telling us for years, y'all hunt your place and you bait, but you're only trying to get, one mature male off of it every year if possible, really every couple of years, because we're trying to manage for our own bear population there too.
Right.
Not that our few hundred acres is going to do all that much for the state, but there's a lot of little bears, and I want not a little bear, and so we're going to go after the big bear. And he's like, you and Kyle Veet, you both hunt, and I had at this point, I'd harvested some bears in the past and had really gotten into it, and I had set this goal of not taking another bear until I get to watch my buddy Kyle take a bear. So we go out to his stand. He's been baiting for us. He's got this like scent proof, fully outfitted, plastic blind. It's sweet. And we bake in the heat for like 7 hours, waiting for a bear to show up. And it was what we heard a lot of people say, bears on camera every single day. Even right after baiting, bears are showing up. But the acorns dropped like the day before.
Yep.
And not a thing showed. And we didn't see another bear until about a month later, right in the middle of the alternative hunt. We were on public land, and we're actually deer hunting, and we're hiking into this one spot that we had scouted before, and there was some good deer sign. But as we're walking in, and we kind of flipped a coin of who follows the best sign and who goes and finds their own spot. And I followed the best sign. And as I'm walking in, there's a dry creek bed, and there's flipped rocks, bear scat, bugs flying everywhere, claw marks in the dirt. So I'm walking in knowing I'm going to set up here on public ground, a spot I've never been in before, and I'm going to see a bear. Like I would have bet on it because there's just bear sign everywhere. And I saw 4 bears that evening.
Wow.
And one really good bear.
Yeah.
And didn't take it because I'd promised.
That's a good friend right there. I don't know if I would have held off.
Well, we had a blast because the next evening we went in and went after it, and he got it.
Awesome.
And it was a blast. And so I'm telling that story because I want to hit a little bit on kind of the bear hunting culture in the Ozarks, and maybe even just at large. You're coming from Mississippi, and you've been studying it, you're finishing up your master's in it, all that kind of stuff. But there's something about public ground, good buddies, and going after a multi-100-pound wild critter way out in the sticks that it's just hard pressed, but not to love, right? I mean, it's awesome.
Absolutely. I mean, the adventure element to that is just hard to beat.
Oh, you feel like you're in Alaska, but you're 2 hours out of your backyard, that kind of thing. Yeah. And so, what are you seeing? Even being a new to Arkansas, new to the Ozarks resident, what are you seeing as far as the bear hunting culture goes, and kind of this corner of the world?
Yeah, I love it. It's like you mentioned, it's a lot different than Mississippi. We haven't had a bear hunt in a long time. We're still waiting on that population to recover to a level where it's sustainable.
Mm-hmm.
But the bear hunting culture here is great, and that's why we have the support we do for having bears on the landscape. We did actually a survey before that reintroduction of Felsenthal I mentioned, and 70% of people were in favor of bringing those bears down to the Gulf Coastal Plain. So it's just it's great to see the support for bears here. Every now and then you have people that don't like having them around, and a lot of times I just talk to them. They don't even know we can hunt them. They don't realize there's that value to them. They don't realize you can eat them and they actually taste good and that type of thing. So I think the few people that aren't a part of that culture is just because they just haven't been exposed to it and don't understand. But the bear hunting culture and the support for bears here is just it's I'm happy to be here. It's great. Yeah.
That's cool. How would you define that culture?
I don't really know how to define it. I wouldn't say fanatical. It's kind of just like it seems like it's almost like getting ready for a good dove hunt or a duck hunt. Just the excitement and the camaraderie of folks getting together for bear camp. That type of thing it's just something that people appreciate, and it's a good way to get together and recreate and share in your love for outdoors and that type of thing.
Yeah, that's cool. There's I feel like I've probably brought 4 or 5, 6, maybe 7, I don't know, buddies into bear hunting the last decade. And they all they've got the bug about as bad as I do at this point, where I can just count on late July into early August, my phone starts ringing from the buddies who I've showed them how to do it, and then their friends who have heard that they're doing it and that I've showed them how to do it, saying, I've got bears on my property and I want to hunt one so bad, or I got a really big bear. What do I do? And where do I set up, and how do I bait, and where do you recommend, even on the mountain, like where would you put bait? You put it down at the bottom, you put it in the middle, you put it at the top, how close to water you want to be, all of that kind of stuff. And it's been, personally for me, really fulfilling. It's been really fun to watch a bunch of people get excited about it, watch a bunch of guys learn how to do it, and then watch their love for the black bear and for the resource and for the bear camp culture to not die, to not go away. Because as soon as people don't care about it anymore, it's done.
Yeah.
I don't fear that for ducks, really. I don't really fear that for deer. There's enough people who, deer's like a primary meat source for them. They've grown up with it. They're going to teach their kids how to do it.
Right.
But bears, there's been kind of a resurgence in that culture.
Yeah.
And there's been a bunch of people before us who've done a really good job highlighting it. And it's just, I don't really know where I'm going with this other than it's really neat to see a bunch of people kind of latch onto it.
Yeah, it's similar. I mean, like you're saying, once people hear about it and they experience it, it's like deer camp. It's like any other hunting camp. I mean, it's really is a really great resource to take advantage of that people a lot of times just need to know, just need to hear about and just need to experience it, and then they realize it's not much different than any other kind of hunting. I know there's a lot of talk about out there about how bears don't taste good and all that kind of stuff. And after I got my first bear last season, I brought it home and was just blown away by the taste. I mean, my wife, who she tries to hunt every now and then, but she's, not super into it like I am. She told me I have to get a bear every year.
I love that.
Yeah.
I love that.
So I don't know. I think a lot of people probably are not handling their meat right when they think bear doesn't taste good. It's a heavy animal. It's hard to get out of the woods. A lot of times it's easier to spoil.
You got to get it cool quick.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So that's probably what the problem is for most folks that are naysayers on bear meat, because it's delicious.
I'm raising my kids on bear grease biscuits.
There you go.
No joke. They love them.
Yeah.
And then if anybody says that bear tastes bad, I need to get you in contact with my buddy Joe Massey, who's figured out how to smoke a bear
Okay.
better than any smoked pork I think you'll ever eat in your life.
That sounds awesome.
Some barbecued bear. Brought slow and slow up into that 200, 203 range.
Yeah.
Fall off the bone tender with barbecue seasoning.
My younger brother,
It's ridiculous.
He's a bit of an amateur cook or chef. However, I don't know how he would put it. He might have a problem with saying that, but he's a really good cook. And after I got my bear, I brought some of it back to share with the family and stuff. And he actually made bear tamales out of it. He made regular beef tamales. He made bear tamales. He made some sort of jambalaya tamale and all this different stuff. And half of my family said the bear tamale was the best one.
Is their favorite thing?
Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah.
Have you done bear jerky yet?
I haven't.
You got to do bear jerky.
Yeah. I got to get some more bear meat.
Bear jerky is so good.
Yeah.
Kind of biltong it. So it's like real thin slice against the grain. All, marinated, low cooked. Oh man, it's so good.
Yep.
Yeah. That culture is important. My family knows they can count on me being gone for a deer camp, a duck camp, a turkey camp, and a bear camp.
Yeah.
And raising small kids, it's really hard to try to hit all those. So I've kind of gone from, I'm just going to hunt all fall whenever I want, to like a dedicated, this is when I'm going to go for the bear.
Yeah.
Then I'll be done for a bit. I'm going to go for a deer or a few. I'll be done for a bit. We'll pick up the start of the year with some ducks, and I'll be done for a bit, and we'll follow into turkey. But man, to have that option on the table for hunters in Arkansas, hunters in the Ozarks. If you draw a bear tag in Missouri, you have all those options for hunters in the Ozarks. It's pretty special that you can have those, that amount of meat in your freezer.
Absolutely.
Those different species and just love it. Love every step of the way.
Yeah. I'm actually in the same boat you just mentioned, taking care of small kids. I've got a 2-year-old and a 1-year-old. So I'm interested to see how this season goes, being the new bear guy, see if I have actually time to get out on my own. Hopefully I do, but we'll see.
Most guys in AGFCs, they got into it so they can hunt. And they always talk about how they can't hunt.
We'll see what happens. Yeah.
I just want to hear kind of as best you can, rapid fire list of black bear myths that maybe you run into in your job, you hear people talking about, or you read on the internet or whatever else. And then what are the actual facts that kind of debunk those myths? So what are maybe the most obvious myths that you hear around the black bear in the Ozarks?
I don't know if you have any off the top of your head that you've heard, but there's not like any crazy super myths out there.
If a black bear stands on its hind legs, it's about to charge.
No.
Like it's rearing up, it's about to get down and run like a horse at you.
No.
Not true?
No, that's usually a curiosity thing. They're trying to pick up a scent. They're trying to get a better vantage and see what's going on. It's not an aggressive stance at all. If you start hearing them popping their jaws, then they're trying to let you know, I'm over here, go away. That's not even necessarily aggressive, but that like I've mentioned, they're trying to avoid us as much as they can. When they stand up like that, they're just trying to figure out what's going on. They haven't seen you yet, and they're trying to get some smell and figure out what's going on. Man,
I had a bear at the bait site last year popping his jaws at me, or
Yeah.
2 years ago popping his jaws at me.
Yeah.
But it didn't know where I was. Do you
Yeah.
think he just smelled human?
That's,
and was
it's
like,
just a
"Ugh."
warning thing, trying to let anything out there know he's there, and
Yeah.
he's serious if you do get close, but it's not necessarily something that means he's going to charge after you.
It's good to know. It spooked me.
Yeah.
Like actually spooked me.
Yeah, when we walk up on them in the traps, it can raise your hairs up.
Yeah.
when they start doing that. And I've had them scratch at me before, and they'll pop their jaws when they do that. It's a warning thing,
Mm-hmm.
but they're not going to chase after you.
But
generally.
it doesn't want to get after you.
No, it doesn't.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. What about this one? The myth is that black bears hibernate all winter.
So hibernation's an interesting thing in the bear world. Hibernation gets thrown around as a pretty general term, and I don't disagree with that. But there's a difference.
You're raised on it in kids' books,
right?
even.
Exactly.
They
Yeah,
hibernate.
Yeah, but there's a difference between hibernating, as it's commonly used, and true hibernators. And black bears and bears in general are not true hibernators.
Mhm.
A true hibernator is going to be unconscious. Its body temperature is going to go close to almost freezing in some cases for animals that actually truly hibernate, and they're just going to be inactive.
Mhm.
But bears in their dens, they are active. They're a little bit lethargic. Their metabolism's lower than usual, but it's not dropping to almost rates where it seems like they're dead type of thing.
Mhm.
That's the big difference there. They don't urinate or defecate the whole time they're in their dens, but that's just that's how they've adapted to surviving the winter. Using up those stored fat resources and that type of thing.
Mhm.
So they're not actually hibernating. And when we go into the den checks, a lot of times they'll look up at us and pop their jaws. Like I said, I got scratched at one time.
Mhm.
They're awake. And
Mhm.
the bears in the Gulf Coast of the Plain, actually, we found recently with the collars we've had out that they'll swap den sites every now and then. It's probably has something to do with disturbance, flooding, that type of thing, just because they're in those lower plains.
Yeah.
Water coming up. So
Interesting.
they're fully awake and active.
So you could see one in the dead of winter
Yeah.
making its way across the landscape. It's probably
Yeah.
going to go find somewhere else to sleep.
Yep.
Interesting.
Yep.
So what do they do? I know there's a word for it. It's not hibernating.
Yeah.
What is it?
So they'll be in a state of torpor,
Mhm.
which is, a little bit lower heart rate, a little bit lower metabolism, slower respirations, but it's really just because they're not using a whole lot of energy.
Mhm.
They're going to lower those energy rates to make it through as best
Mhm.
they can, but it's not the same thing as hibernating.
They're just being couch potatoes.
Yep.
Black bears are always black.
Nope.
Nope. I think we've covered this one a little
Yeah.
bit, but
No, there's a lot of color phases to black bears, and that's why we get the random call every now and then that we got a grizzly bear or a brown bear somewhere. But no, they can be blonde, they can be brown, even what we call a cinnamon color is kind of like a reddish tint.
Mhm.
And there's actually a population of bears near the Silicon Valley, near Washington. They call them spirit bears. They actually have white coats. About one in every, I think it's 5 bears or so is born with white coats. They look like tiny little polar bears.
Like a true white.
Yeah.
Not a
Yeah.
tan or a I mean, it's a white
It's
bear.
actually white. Yeah. A lot of the pictures you see, they're kind of dirty and
Sure.
they look, a little, off white, but yeah, it's an actually true white coat. Yeah.
That is cool.
Yeah.
That's really cool.
It would be cool if we had them around here, but unfortunately it's really only in that population
Yeah.
up there, but
They get hunted quick if they're here.
yeah.
Who wouldn't want a white bear
Yeah.
pelt?
They probably wouldn't last very
Yeah.
long.
All right, I've got one more question before I kind of just let you finish out with regulations or anything else there that we haven't covered from AGFC. And this is another hauler community question from somebody who's in the same hauler with us on their Patreon, and it's from Dylan Thornley, and he asked a very, very relevant question to the bear hunter, which is, how do you judge a bear's age and sex and weight in the field?
Yeah, that's a common question, and it's something that even some biologists struggle with. It can be difficult, especially if you're a good distance away. For the sex thing, it's really the best things that are going to help you is the shape of the head and the size of the head, and then also, well, I'll get into that after. So the head on a male is going to be a little bit blockier and a little bit wider and bigger.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to kind of have a bluntness to it, and it's going to look like a big old square-headed bear. And the females will kind of look like almost like you pinched them and tried to drew them out a little bit. It's going to be a sharper nostril or a sharper, just sharper face
and head. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's usually a good way to tell. But if they're walking away from you, it's not always the best way. One thing that I found when I first heard about this, I was kind of skeptical, but it's actually something I found to be pretty reliable. Is if you actually look at their ankles and their feet, the females actually look like a little bit narrower, almost like they've got a bracelet. They had a bracelet on for a little bit
on the front paws.
yeah,
Okay.
and it'll look a little bit narrow coming from the legs to the paws, and the males will just be like they got cankles, just same shape all the way into the paws.
Mm-hmm.
So that can help if you've got a good side profile and not getting a good shot of the head. And just in general, bears are sexually dimorphic, so the females are smaller than males. So if you've got a small bear with the ears, we'll talk about the ears in a second too, but the ears don't look like super long or anything, it's probably going to be a female. And that's the other thing about size. If you see a bear and you don't have something good to judge size on, if the ears look like they're just super long, legs are lanky, there's not much belly on it, that's going to be a young bear.
It's a young bear.
Yeah.
Yep.
And one thing that I got told last season, if you're hunting over bait, is a good judge is your bait barrel. If you look, if the bear looks like you could shove it inside the bait barrel, it's a small bear.
Mm-hmm.
But if it looks like you would have a hard time stuffing it in there, it's going to be a big bear.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I know a lot of guys will try to judge shoulder height against the bait barrel,
Mhm.
that kind of thing. Is that a
Yeah.
pretty good tool
Yeah,
for that?
it can be. You'll get some 2 and 3 year old bears that'll be taller than the bait barrel though. So it really relying on that. If you think you could stuff them in there is a
Mhm.
good way to go.
So you want height and width
Yeah,
to age a big,
yeah.
a bigger older bear.
The ears really on an older big bear, the ear will look like you just kind of cut off the top of a lollipop and stuck it on there, whereas a younger bear will look kind of drawn out and long.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Full ear.
Mhm.
Yeah. That's good. The average size in the Ozarks, if you're going to square a bear, after it's harvested, that kind of thing.
Mhm.
Most people, let's talk square for a second, because I'm now thinking like it's actually hard to define squared. But let's talk square, and then let's talk if it was flat-footed on the ground and standing straight up. Average height to age kind of ratios, if we have averages.
Yeah. I don't know if I could give you a good average on that. I could estimate off the top of my head. A young bear standing up is probably going to be anywhere, 4 to 5 feet tall. Whereas a fully grown adult's going to be over 6 foot.
Mm-hmm.
Pushing maybe even 7 for a really big bear.
Mm-hmm.
Standing flat footed on the ground, I'd say. I don't know if I want to give a good estimate on that. It's hard to judge from a distance anyway how tall they are. So I don't know, maybe 3 feet or so from the shoulder is probably going to be a pretty decent sized bear. But
And then for hunters who square a bear, I know it's a math equation of your pelt kind of splayed open, that kind of thing. Let's just kind of go middle of the line average, like the equivalent to a 120-inch buck in bear speak would be about how big?
Honestly, I don't even know. That's not something I've spent a whole lot of time with. I'd have to look into that to get you a better answer on that.
Let me know.
Yeah,
Stump the Pro. I'm here for that. That's a question I'm always asking, because you'll have the pelt splayed out and you're like,
yeah,
I know this was a nice bear, but I don't know if it was a really nice bear or if it was an averagely nice bear. I harvested a mature nice bear.
Yeah.
Now, probably even asking that tells me that it's an averagely nice bear, because you'll know when it's a huge bear.
Yeah. The one thing I would tell folks is just get a scale. I hear people saying all the time, "Oh, it's a 500-pound bear," and then I see a picture of it and I'm like,
it's a 200-pound bear.
Yeah, it's 250, 300. Yeah.
Yeah.
So if you get a scale and you can show that you actually weighed it, that's the best way to know how big your bear is.
Okay. So scale, and then put it on its feet and see how tall it is, and square it out.
Yeah.
And be proud of your harvest no matter what.
Absolutely.
Love that.
Yeah.
Love that. Anything else in the kind of the AGFC world, or best practices, or anything you want to let the Ozarkers who are either watching bears or hunting bears or just care about bear health in general would need to know? Yeah,
I would say, I'm one person. We have a few folks on the bear team. We can tell and educate as much as possible, but it's really up to all the people that want to see bears out there to tell folks the best practices for, living with bears and keeping bears around. The more we can tell people those type of practices, the more support we'll have. And that's really just, conflict with bears happens whenever we have attractants out. and they're going to try to get that free meal, and then they wind up getting in trouble near somebody's house, digging through their garbage, tearing out a bird feeder, that type of thing. So really preaching that to folks will make the biggest difference in support for bears and having more bears on the landscape. Don't have your bird feeders out when bears are active. Secure your garbage. If you have a garage, keep your garbage in there and keep it closed. Don't take it out till actual garbage day. If you don't have a garage, they make bear-proof containers out there for taking your garbage out. If you got apiaries and chickens and stuff like that in your backyard, that's great. But getting some solar-powered electrical fencing is a great way to deter a bear. And put some little peanut butter on the wire so they come up, sniff it, and get a shock, and they don't want to check it out again. That type of stuff. Bearwise.org has a bunch of information for living with bears, and if we can get that out there, that'll make it even better for having a good, healthy bear population.
Bearwise.org.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay, that's great. So just how to live around bears. That's kind of the stuff y'all want people to
exactly. Yeah, that'll raise that cultural carrying capacity so that we can have more bears and more hunting opportunity. So
that's great.
Yep.
Well, long live the bear state.
Absolutely.
I want to see more bears.
Yeah.
I want my kids to someday hunt bears. My kids are being raised up on stories of bear hunts.
Yeah.
My daughter has no idea what she's talking about, but it's her favorite story that she gets told most nights is going on a bear hunt. So it's it's cool. I really appreciate your time, Spencer, and appreciate your willingness to drive up here and talk bears, and hopefully our audience connect with a lot of it, even if they're not bear hunters. I mean, just to hear about Arkansas as the bear state, to know that there's more bears going up in the Missouri Ozarks. We've heard from people who've even reached out saying they drew a tag in Missouri and they want to chat with us on how to best, go after a bear on public land, that kind of thing. So it's neat. We're watching that culture grow, and people get excited about it. And you got a really neat job, and I imagine a very big job ahead of you.
I love it.
Getting to do all things bear coordination here for this great bear state of ours.
I'm happy to be here. Happy to talk bears anytime. I appreciate the invite.